A war in a different galaxy far, far away. This is Sega Masters. The Master System's days in the US may appear to have been numbered as October 1989 rolled around, but that didn't stop Sega from gracing their 8-bit console with another arcade port, and a super scalar conversion at that, though one of a completely different beast. This time we're looking at Galaxy Force, a 3D rail shooter that has often been described as Afterburner in space. This 4-mega cartridge takes us to the faraway Junos Galaxy, a group of planets under attack by some malevolent force known only as the Fourth Empire. Not surprisingly, it falls on you to take the controls of your Galaxy Force Starfighter and lead the counterattack against these marauders through 5 levels of shooting action. Galaxy Force was originally an arcade game from 1988, and other the so-called super scalers, it often presented itself more like a ride than an actual video game. Though the initial version of the coin-op was only on the market for a very short time before being replaced by Galaxy Force 2, which, like Afterburner 2, was merely an upgrade instead of an actual sequel which rebalanced the gameplay and added extra levels. Whichever version you fed tokens into, the coin-op still followed the core formula as most of the previous super scalar shooters, flying forward on a set of rails and blasting the scaling targets that appear on the screen. However, this coin-op was powered by Sega's Advanced System Y board, which enabled it to pull off some truly impressive visuals that trumped its predecessors by far, as well as giving you a less restrictive range of movement, letting you feel like you're actually in full control of things for once. Of course, in addition to the traditional upright model, the coin-op was often found nestled inside an incredible rotating cabinet which moved and pivoted in practically every direction imaginable, well and truly placing the player in the game. Needless to say, Galaxy Force was another arcade success for Sega, yet it's a little surprising to see home versions pop up on the Master System and various computer platforms, as many questioned the wisdom of porting the coin-op to platforms that lacked the capabilities to come even remotely close to mimicking the arcade version's graphical trickery, Sega's own console included. Over the course of this series, we've seen Sega attempt to convert their other famous super scalar coin-op hits to the Master System time and again in an attempt to generate some console sales, such as Space Harrier, Afterburner, and Thunderblade, cabinets which didn't have a fraction of the graphical prowess of the system whiteboard behind them, only to watch time and again as the underpowered console struggled to come even remotely close to producing reasonably playable facsimiles. And now we find Sega looking to somehow stuff a super advanced title like Galaxy Force into a 4-mega cartridge for their console. Obviously today's video will show how much they succeeded. It is worth noting that Sega published the cartridge themselves over in Europe, while Galaxy Force was distributed in the US by Activision, and it would serve as their last contribution to the Master System before they, like Parker Brothers, also gave up on Sega's 8-bit platform. The loss of the very few North American third-party companies willing to support the Master System in the late 1980s was taken by many as another sign of the console's impending demise in the US market. As the game begins, you're given a choice of 4 stages to start with, though the green planet is actually mostly open space. Once your choice is made, your starfighter is launched into battle through a rather impressive intro, and the action begins. Just like the original arcade version, each stage basically consists of 2 segments, and the first part is you simply surviving a gauntlet of foes and obstacles on your way to breach the enemy's stronghold. Your starfighter is equipped with a laser cannon and homing missiles, both of which have unlimited ammo to take out the various targets that cross your path. As you'd expect, a number of concessions were needed to make Galaxy Force into something actually workable on this console, both in the visuals and in the gameplay, but it falls well short of mimicking the graphical wizardry that made the original so memorable. While this port attempts to fool you into thinking you have the same freedom of movement as the arcade original, you instead appear to be stuck in a single stationary spot on the screen as everything comes toward you. Pushing left or right on the D-pad merely shifts the background and sprites in an attempt to give the appearance that you're steering in either direction, though there's no rotation effects that go along with it. Don't bother looking for the giant battle cruisers or huge obstacles either. Those were taken out in favor of waves of smaller recurring enemies. While the sprites are nicely done and everything moves at a decent pace, you're still treated to plenty of choppy animation and scaling, as well as sprite flicker when certain objects overlap. The choppiness also causes a slight input delay with the controls, which makes it rather clunky and awkward to maneuver your ship with any real precision. You can find yourself accidentally running into obstacles you're trying to avoid. Fortunately, a shield enables your fighter to absorb multiple hits, and the colors on the indicator clue you in on how close you are to perishing. You also don't have to worry about a timer slowly ticking down toward your demise, since that was omitted, leaving you to concentrate on the task at hand. At the same time, the speed controls were removed as well, meaning your ship is stuck at a fixed velocity with nowhere to go faster or slower. Those who played the arcade version may remember how the carnage seamlessly flows into the second part of the level, which takes place in the enemy stronghold and forces you to fly through a somewhat claustrophobic tunnel shooting at more targets, not unlike the Millennium Falcon's flight through the Death Star in Return of the Jedi. The flight through the stronghold is included in this port, but sadly this was apparently the best that programmers could do given the console's limitations. It's not really convincing since, if you look closely, you again seem to be stuck in place as a series of flashing rotating colors over static pillars attempt to give the illusion of forward movement. Not to mention these segments are insanely difficult despite actually being sparsely populated by foes shooting at you. The frustration mainly comes from simply navigating the twists and turns themselves. Even with the helpful prompts that try to guide you, it's very difficult to tell if you're turning at the correct angle. You can find yourself running into walls and taking damage until you bite the dust. Unfortunately, you only have one life, and while a continue feature is present, it boots you back to the stage selection screen, meaning you have to start the level over from the beginning and making them almost pointless. In the arcade version, the stage climaxes with an attack on the planet's central energy core, which surprisingly doesn't put up any real resistance and can be dispatched without too much effort before moving on to the next planet. That sequence was cut out from this home version entirely. In fact, there's no end-of-level boss of any sort to cap off the stage. Instead, the level merely concludes with you simply departing the planet, which abruptly implodes or explodes without any explanation of what you actually did to cause its demise. Nonetheless, you're congratulated for completing the level and awarded your bonus points when your shield is replenished. Following that, you're free to choose the next stop on your crusade. While you can challenge the initial 4 stages in any order, all must be completed before you're granted access to the final level, where the 4th Empire mothership supposedly awaits. Unlike the first level, the other 3 planets each have different actual landscapes for you to skim across, though these stages are rather simplified from the coin-up version with much of the scenery and major obstacles removed. They can even seem rather barren at times, other than the environmental hazards thrown at you along with the foes looking to gun you down. At least the action is backed up by a rather enjoyable soundtrack, with each planet having its own well-done background tune, whether you listen to the normal PSG music or the FM enhanced versions accessible on modded consoles. The sound effects, on the other hand, are somewhat scratchy, and the fact that you spend much of the game spamming the fire button means the fine music will mostly be drowned out. But the biggest issue is how Galaxy Force on the Master System comes off as a rather basic and repetitive 3D shooter. Once again the result of a superscalar title that's been stripped of the rotating cabinet and flashy graphics that cover up the rather shallow core gameplay. In fact, this conversion is almost the exact same game as the Master System port of Space Harrier from 2 years earlier. The visuals may be different, but the pattern is essentially identical to that early conversion, as all you're doing is shooting clunkily scaling targets over and over with almost no variation, a template just about followed by every other superscalar port on the console. This port also only contains 5 levels, as one stage from the arcade version is missing, so completing this one won't take too long if you're not put off by the frustration by then. 2 different endings await gamers who endure this version to the end. A bad ending and a good ending you can only see by making it through the entire game from start to finish without using a single continue. In conclusion, Galaxy Force isn't a complete wreck. It's playable once you grow accustomed to the choppiness and quirks, yet too much was sacrificed to make it work on the Master System and you're left with a pale imitation of the original that you've already played several times before, just under different names. Even if you ignore comparisons to the original, it doesn't have anything to help it succeed on its own merits and it won't hold your interest for very long. Then again, as is often the case with coin-op conversions on an 80s console, it's not like those wishing to relive the arcade original have to settle for this outdated port nowadays. It took quite a few years, but the faithful home conversions that Galaxy Force fans have longed for eventually became a reality, thanks to the more advanced consoles that have appeared since the latter half of the 1990s. Consoles containing the necessary horsepower to be able to produce very close if not near perfect facsimiles without all the compromises. A nearly spot-on port was released on the Saturn exclusively in Japan in 1998, which remedied most of the problems that plagued Sega's previous attempts at home versions of the arcade original. A 3D enhanced port was also released on the Nintendo 3DS in 2013 as part of Sega's 3D Classics line of downloadable titles, which not only replicated the arcade game just about flawlessly, but also offered a nice selection of gameplay options as well, including a few ways to simulate the arcade cabinet. While this version can no longer be downloaded, it can still easily be found on the Sega 3D Classics physical cartridge. As far as Galaxy Force on the Master System goes, it serves as yet another sad reminder of what happens when the console is asked to punch far above its weight class. There are far better ways to play the arcade game than this pale imitation, and the console's library has plenty of other shooters offering far more engaging action. Either way, there is no real reason to give it a look unless you must partake of every shooter found on the Master System.